Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today, we're going to cover one of the burstiest AP mid laners in League of Legends. It's LeBlanc, the Deceiver.
The black rose shall bloom once more.
LeBlanc is one of those AP mid laners that can bully the shit out of her opponent. They have to be afraid at most points in the game since she does an insane amount of burst and can delete them at many points in the game. With that high single target damage, she also has a ton of mobility and utility. If she's able to pick up some kills in the mid lane or when roaming, she's able to snowball like crazy. Now, although that all may be true, she does however require more awareness and faster reflexes than most other mid lane champions. She has a lot of damage combos and jukes that she can pull off, but they have to be used rather quickly. If she gets caught in a CC, usually she'll be deleted rather quickly as she's a high kill target and she's very squishy. For our Masteries, we go 12 Ferocity and 18 Cunning, grabbing Thunderlord's Decree as our Keystone Mastery. LeBlanc's a champion in the mid lane that really relies on her quick burst. Thunderlord's Decree will help just add a little bit of damage to this burst and help snag some kills. Other than that, you pretty much just want to focus on getting as much damage and sustain in these trees so you can bully your mid lane opponent. For our runes, we go 9 greater marks of magic penetration, 9 greater seals of scaling health, 6 greater glyphs of scaling cooldown reduction, 3 greater glyphs of magic resist, and 3 greater quintessences of ability power. The ability power and the magic penetration just adds a nice chunk of damage onto the mid lane opponent when you are going in for harass or burst. Now we needed to grab 6 greater glyphs of scaling cooldown reduction for that 10% cooldown reduction at level 18 since we only get 30 in our item build. This is also why we get the greater seals of scaling health, so we're actually a little bit tanky at least in the mid lane, and if we are against an AD champion then we may want to take armor instead. The summoners on mid lane LeBlanc are Flash and Ignite. Flash is basically a given. You can use it offensively to help snag kills, or you can use it defensively to help escape your own death. Ignite, on the other hand, is pure offense. LeBlanc is a champion that really relies on having a strong early game, and Ignite can help secure this. This can add a nice chunk of damage onto the mid lane opponent when you're going in for all-ins, which can result in a kill. So first up for our abilities is our passive, Mirror Image. As the name kind of gives away, this of course creates an image of yourself which actually starts walking after it does trigger. This passive can actually save your life in tons and tons of different situations. Lots of people will ignite, CC, or even chase your clone and shortly realize after that they weren't actually on the enemy champion. Just remember, if you do have a dot on you, like an ignite or something before the clone procs, you will still have it on you, so they will automatically know which one that you are, so don't even bother trying to juke. This will just end up being a waste of your time. Something you have to remember is it does actually stealth you for 1 second when it does trigger. If you use your flash or something to escape over a wall before you come out of stealth, it'll look like you actually vanished. You won't actually be there, but your clone will be sitting there. Next up is your Q, Sigil of Malice. This is a great damage ability that becomes your main damage source in the later stages of the game. After you have a couple points in this ability, you want to make sure you proc the second half of the damage after you use the ability. Using the ability by itself without comboing is rather low damage, but when you do start to combo it, it's pretty respectable damage. You want to try and proc it whenever the hell you can, but if it's going to put you in a really bad situation, obviously don't do so. Next up is her W, Distortion, and this is definitely her best ability. This is a ton of damage, a gap closer, and an escape all in one ability. At max rank, it even only has a 10-second cooldown, which obviously goes down a lot with our 40% CDR build. As I said, this can do massive damage, and it has endless juking potential. You can W over a wall, and when the enemy flashes over to chase you, simply W back over the wall and run away. You can also use your W twice with your ultimate and create a massive gap for another reliable escape against a very mobile target. It's good in tons and tons of different defensive situations, but it's also incredible in offensive situations as well. There's all sorts of different combos you can use that use your W, and we will get to the combo section in just a little bit. First, we're going to look at our E, Ethereal Chains. This is a great skill that allows you to kite, damage, or control your enemies, and you can even save fleeing allies. It can be rather hard to land, especially if the enemy is behind minions. If it does land, however, you're rewarded with a great CC. Now that's all I'm going to really say about the ability for now. We're going to go more in depth in our combos, which is coming up right after our ultimate page. So your last ability is your R, Mimic. This basically just allows you to cast your last spell twice. It allows you to do some awesome poke with double Q, great escapes with double W, and you can root people twice with double E. It's even got a really short cooldown. This allows you to do all sorts of crazy shit, and we're going to look at those combos that you can actually pull off with your ultimate in a second. For the ability order, we of course take our ultimate first at 6, 11, and 16. As for our basic abilities, we max W, our distortion, which is our gap closer or gap creator, first. So we take it at 1, 4, 5, 7, and 9. Next is our Q, which is a nice little poke ability and is actually really strong damage late game. Last but not least is our E, which is our CC. We just need the one early point so we can actually CC, but the damage is not as strong as the W and Q, so we max it last. Our extremely early game combo is just simply a Q and a W. Now the Q, if you do remember, does more damage if you follow it up with another ability. We therefore want to make sure this is on them first, so when we go in for a W, it procs this extra damage and does a huge chunk of damage in total. You can then follow this up with a couple auto attacks, and then simply W back out and not take much trade damage. For our pre-level 6 all-in, we simply add E into the mix. Our E isn't too hard to land as long as we are really close to the enemy, and W allows us to do that. We can hang around auto-attacking until the E actually procs the damage, and possibly get another Q in, and hopefully get a kill in the process. Our mid/late game one-shot combo is a W, 2 Qs, one with the ultimate of course, and then the E CC. We're able to close the gap on our enemy with the W, land 1 Q and use the R for another Q, so we proc the first damage on the first Q, and then land the E so we proc the second damage on the second Q, and this should honestly be enough to completely one-shot the enemy opponent, unless they're tanky as shit. Our long-range combo is all about closing a really long gap on a target. This is a more common combo if you are trying to chase an opponent that has flashed away from you and is rather low and you don't need to do a ton of damage, but you need to close the gap to kill them. We do this by using our W, then our R to do another W, closing that massive gap, and then we simply follow up with a Q and E, so we do as much damage as possible when we do close that gap, and we get our CC off if it's needed. Last is our tank lockdown combo. Now in the late game, LeBlanc can really struggle at actually dealing enough damage to a tank to bring them down, so sometimes she may have to just lock them down for her team. We do this by doing an E, and when the CC procs, we can use our ultimate to do yet another E, and then do a bunch of damage afterwards. LeBlanc is a champion who's really strong in the early game, and you need to press your advantage. You need to make sure you're farming effectively, but you also have to be harassing your opponent. At level 1, you can just do a bunch of auto attacks with a distortion, follow it up with more auto attacks, and then distortion back out to do a lot of harass, even at level 1. At 2, like we talked about in the combo portion, you simply add a Q in front. It's a ton of damage LeBlanc can do in the early game, and there's very few champions that can deal with it. Since you are such a threat in the mid lane, usually you're able to keep the enemy jungler around your lane. For a lot of mid laners, this can be an issue, but LeBlanc's escapes are incredible, and it honestly matters not even a little bit. As long as you have wards and any map awareness at all, ganks are usually not too effective on LeBlanc. This will hopefully allow your own lanes to actually either come out even or win, especially if your jungler's helping them. Now, when you have a bunch of points in your W, it does some pretty damn good AoE damage, and you want to try to delete minion waves so you can start roaming. With all of your damage, mobility, and CC, you have incredibly potent ganks. You need to be doing this as much as possible so you can get either yourself or your teammates snowballing for a pretty easy game. As we know, LeBlanc is really strong in the early and mid game. In team fights, especially early on, you can pretty much focus anybody and delete them. Tanks aren't truly tanks in the early game, and you do have enough damage to insta-gib them. It's a great part of the game for LeBlanc. Just pick any target you can get a hold of and delete their ass. Mid-game becomes quite a bit harder, although you are pretty strong at this phase of the game. This is pretty much due to the fact that you don't have enough damage in your burst to actually bring down the tanks at this point in the game. You of course can easily delete AD carries and other squishies on the enemy team, so you have to be looking for those targets. Remember that you have high damage and mobility, so try to get to the back line, delete a target, and simply distortion out afterwards and help your team on the front line. Late game is still pretty much the same, except you have to put a bit more value on your own life. With all the cooldown reduction you have at this point in the game, you actually do tons and tons of damage, so you don't want to trade yourself always. Generally, you'll find yourself in your own team's backline a bit more often, but if you can find any flanking opportunities for squishy targets, of course take those. Just make sure you know you're going to be safe before you do so, and then go all in. It just requires a bit of patience. So these right here are the hardest matchups for LeBlanc in mid lane. First, of course, is Malzahar. Man, this guy can lock you down, just taking out any mobility you have, and he deals a ton of damage that you can't do shit about. In most cases where you're passive procs and you might be able to escape, well, he's got his dot on you, so he knows which one of the clones you are. Honestly, if the team has picked a Malzahar, don't pick LeBlanc, man. Like, it's not worth it. You're going to be so infuriated. Just don't do it. If you are unlucky enough to have to fight this bastard, just make sure you're saving your distortion and you don't get too close to him so that he can melt you with his combo. He's going to have his pool under you, his dot ticking on you, use his R, and you're dead. It doesn't matter what gear you have, you're just completely fucking dead. Just play this more passive than usual, look for a lot more roaming opportunities, and possibly try invading the jungler, depending on which one you're against. Anivia's hard in the fact that even if you do burst her down, she just comes back. Early game especially, you're not going to have the cooldown reduction to delete her a second time, and she could come back and destroy you. For this matchup, you pretty much just don't want to overcommit. Don't be too damn aggressive. Don't put yourself in the position where you actually bring her down, and then you sit around waiting for the egg, just for the enemy jungler to sweep in behind you, and for both of them to destroy you. This is another matchup where you just want to look for more roaming opportunities. Anivia is really immobile, and if you are roaming, she's generally not going to follow you. You can honestly win this matchup by just avoiding Anivia. Get those roam ganks, kill some people, and have both you and your team snowballing. Morgana is pretty much the same as Anivia. Sure, she doesn't come back, but she's got a spell shield that can disrupt your whole combo, and you can't really bring her down. Yet again, Morgana is rather immobile. Look for more roaming opportunities. Your ganks are also a hell of a lot better than hers, and get you, and you guessed it, your team snowballing. She's a lot better than you at team fighting as well, so make sure you're looking for picks and whatnot and you're not forced to team fight into Morgana ults. The last one I've listed is Syndra. Now this one people may not be so familiar with because a lot of people don't play Syndra, but she has received a lot of nice little buffs and bug fixes, and she's pretty damn good right now. She has a lot higher range than LeBlanc, and she can completely disrupt her combos with her stuns. She can then follow it up with her insane burst from her ultimate, deleting LeBlanc completely. She's not as hard as the other matchups, but she's definitely one that can give LeBlanc a lot of trouble if the Syndra player is competent. Our item build starts with a Doran's Ring, some health potions, and a warding totem. For our first buy, we either get an Abyssal Scepter, Morello's, or a Seeker's Arm Guard. Seeker's Arm Guard you're obviously getting against your Zeds, your Talons, any sort of AD mid that could give you trouble. Now, my most common first buy is Abyssal Scepter. It adds tons of damage, and your trading becomes a lot better as well since you pick up a lot of magic resist. Now, if you don't think you're going to need the magic resist at all, and you want to have more mana regeneration and whatnot, Morello's is a great item. You pretty much just want to follow the rule of, if it's an AD champion, get a Seeker's, if it's a relatively good AP champion, get the Abyssal Scepter, and if you can stomp your lane, get the Morello's. So for our core build is of course that Abyssal Scepter, Morello's, and Sork Shoes. Now obviously if you are against an AD mid laner, you could have the Seeker's Arm Guard in there as well. So LeBlanc is a champion who's all about dealing a shitload of damage really quickly. So of course we go for a very high AP build. We take our core build and then we add a Rabadon's Death Cap. This is the AP item that adds the most ability power possible, and you know what, that sounds perfect on an AP Burst Assassin. To get through any late game magic resist, we then of course get the Void Staff. This will allow you to keep deleting those squishies that may have a little bit of MR, but also help you deal some actual damage to the tankier targets. Now at this point we are a very squishy champion, so we pick up a defensive item in the Zhonya's Hourglass. Bunch of AP and an activated immune, making it perfect on LeBlanc. As for the alternatives, well, if you're snowballing hardcore, you may as well get a Magi's. A great stacking AP item, although you do lose a lot of stacks if you die, so if you're a very aggressive player who kind of makes mistakes once in a while, don't get a Magi's. If you're looking to become just a little bit tankier and have a slow in your kit, you can get the Rylai's. I don't get it very often, but if I want some frontline presence, Rylai's is perfect. Luden's Echo and Lichbane are probably the two most common alternatives, however. Both add a lot of AP, but both even have movement speed, making your roaming much more effective. Both are great items, but I personally prefer the full build, but they are great pickups if you wish to try them. So that pretty much covers everything for our mid lane LeBlanc guide. My apologies, I said I would have this up yesterday on at least one YouTube comment, but I got really busy with Canada Day and the day after and shit, so I kind of just got to it today. Either way though, if you guys did enjoy the video, please make sure you like and subscribe. We have tons and tons of League of Legends content coming out every single day, so, you know, you can look out for those. You can also view more of our guides on our website, www.egamingtv.com. We have a really nice list of the champion guides there, and you can look through them all. You can also visit us on Twitter at egaming_TV. We do all of our skin giveaways on Twitter, so if you're interested in the chance to win free skins, you can head over there and follow. So thanks a ton for watching, guys. Remember, if you did enjoy, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next champion guide. Peace.